Hello, this is James. I think we're about ready to get started here. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, great. All right, let me see if I can share the screen. Okay. Okay, give me one more second. I'm getting my screen share fired up here. All right. Okay, so I'm ready to get started then. I will now share my screen, and I have a presentation to run through. So this is on launching an online lead generation business, and I'm excited to talk to everybody today. If anybody has any questions, please just pop them here in the chat, and I will stop every couple minutes and answer them. Don't hesitate at all. It's always good to hear questions from the audience. Okay, so, and can everybody see my screen okay? I just want to, no screen share yet. Okay, let me just see. Let's see. Okay, can you guys see the screen share now? Not yet. Okay, let's see how this works. It says it's sharing it. How about now? Okay, now you can see it? Okay, great. Fantastic. So let me just figure out how to close this up. All right. Okay, are we all good then? Okay, I'll get started. Let's see. I will close this down. All right. Okay, so today we'll talk a little bit about launching an online lead generation business. Over the years, I guess I've been doing this now for probably about 12, 13 years, working with our clients, building, websites, directory-style websites. The majority of them are often lead generation type businesses. It is one of the best business models in the world, and the reason is it's a little bit difficult, I guess, to get it set up and running, but after it's running, it typically has great recurring revenue. and it's just fantastic. If you have another type media business, such as say running a newspaper, or even a digital newspaper, you're challenged daily with adding fresh content. And so a directory-style lead generation business has a great advantage in that once the content is created, it doesn't go stale very quickly. And often you can provide a lot of value for clients, and so it becomes, it turns into be a pretty lucrative business over time. Okay, so to get started, the first thing is considerations on choosing a sector. And many people already enter this with an idea of a sector that they want to choose, but it is really important that you think about it and you think about the strengths and the weaknesses of the sector that you're choosing. And why do you want to choose it? One of the best reasons to choose a sector is because you personally have domain knowledge in the sector. You have a history of working in there. Say if you're an insurance agent, you may want to start a lead generation business around the insurance industry, for example. And that knowledge that you have can really give you a competitive advantage. So that's a great reason to choose a sector. The other reason is maybe you have access to resources that are not widely available. Maybe you have a database or a business partnership or a friend, or something that gives you some type of a resource to help you get this business launched in this sector. Is a great. I know we worked with one client that had a very nice a partner. One of their partners had a great database, and that enabled them to get started quickly and get things off the ground. So that's always a great advantage. One major thing to think about is how lucrative is the sector that you're looking at, and lucrative in terms of profit is one thing, but like, what is the average ticket? How much is the average sale in the sector? Like, say you're doing a directory on something that's some industrial product that may have an average sale of $100,000. That's often a lot better than something like, say, I'm going to do a directory of hairstylists where the average ticket is $30. And the reason for that is with the larger priced sale, the average ticket in a sector, it makes it easier. It gives you more time, I guess, to get ROI. You don't need to have as much traffic, etc. If they're able to close one sale a year off your directory, off the lead that you sent them, they'll probably be pretty good. Is everybody still with me? Is the screen share and everything working? Just want to make sure everything's going okay. Somebody can paste in the chat. Okay, great. So anyway, the average ticket in the sector, very, very important, something to think about. And if you're deciding, between a couple different sectors, you may want to put a spreadsheet together and just compare. And then also there is traffic volume in the sector. Say you're doing a lead gen business for nuclear reactors. There's probably not a whole lot of customers in that area, but if you're doing hairstylists, there is a lot of volume. So you kind of have to balance this out between volume and how lucrative the sector is. There are a couple other considerations. Some things are natural, where people naturally want to use a guide. And some things are things that they do repetitively. Like, for example, the hairstylist example. Usually, once people find their hairstylist, they don't change that much. They'll go there forever. And so it's really tough to get people to switch in that type of a sector. And whereas some other sectors, like say you're doing a home repair or something along those lines, it's not something you do every day, every year, so you probably need a guide. You're going to research it online. You're going to figure it out. So some things to think about just in terms of choosing a sector. And then, you can quantify everything using some tools. Google Adwords has a tool where you can figure out, what are how much volume is there in terms of traffic volume in the sector online, and then how much does it cost per click, etc. And you can kind of look at those statistics and get an idea of what's going on in the sector. And then the last thing that I would want to mention is when you go into a business, obviously you don't want to be a third, fourth player in the market. You want to dominate it. So you should enter something where you think you can dominate the niche. And when you think about dominating a niche, it may be you're able to dial it down even further and make it more specific, either on a geographic basis. Or instead of doing like insurance in general, maybe you do home insurance or something along those lines. Some very, very specific part of a broader niche. You want to make sure that you're in a position to build out content, and you're the #1 player in that niche, because Google and the way that the internet works is it's often it trends towards a winner-take-all type of a system where there's some sites that get vast majority of the traffic, and then there's a long tail that goes out, and you can survive probably being in the long tail, but it's much more lucrative if you're able to be a #1 or #2 for the niche. So certainly think about that. And okay, so after you've decided what you're going to focus on, probably just think about how you're going to build the business. Typically, there's 3 phases of the business. The first one is content, building out the site, building what you're building there. The second one is engagement or driving traffic, etc. And then the third one is monetization. And it's very important that you think about these 3 phases almost distinctly, although certainly content building is something that goes through the whole life cycle forever, even once you're well into the monetization phase. But often we see people try to do monetization with an empty website. It just doesn't look that good. It doesn't really feel full. It doesn't feel alive. And then the monetization doesn't work, and people kind of like, what's going on? It wasn't successful. So, before you really spend all your time on engagement, it's important to really think about content. Is your content where it needs to be? And then once you've got some engagement, you're getting traffic coming through, you're getting leads, etc. Then you can move on to the sales process, etc. Okay. So we'll start quickly here with the first phase, which is how to build content. #1 rule: never start with an empty directory. Never start with a directory that doesn't look like it's already winning and killing it. You need to just do all that work yourself, or have a team do it before you start. It's really, really important. And often people kind of move in to start, I'm going to start working on driving traffic before the content really looks good, and that's never quite as successful as it will be before the content looks good. It is a lot of work, but that's the business. Typically what you want to do is start with some base data, and this is for directory listings. In addition, you need other types of content such as white papers, blog posts, etc. But often the lead gen part of it, the directory listing, is really, really key. So you can start with buying data. There's a whole bunch of data providers out there. The leaders in the U.S. are InfoUSA, Localese. I think Localese is actually bought recently. Dun & Bradstreet, huge. They're pretty international as well. Axiom Infodata, etc. If you need help finding a data provider, if either we've done this a long time, and I can probably point you in the right direction, don't hesitate to contact me after the webinar. But there's some great data out there. Some of it's very expensive, some of it's very cheap, and some of it has restrictions on what you're able to use it for, etc. So you'll just have to do an analysis, figure out what you want to do there. But really, you do need to start with some data. You can also get data from trade organizations, chambers of commerce, There's, I also mentioned scrape data, and that's always an issue. You have to be very careful about the legalities surrounding scrape data, but I think typically business name and address is public, at least if this is US kind of stuff. Business name, address is public info, and that is not copyrightable. However, other things like images, descriptions, etc. are, so maybe you're able to scrape the business name, etc., and then backfill the other information to make sure that it's unique. And there's a number of desktop scraping tools, other types of tools out there. You can search around for that. In terms of, and then the next step is and then there's manual built data that you can do yourself, or you can augment the data. Okay. Let's see. Is anybody? Oh, it's Beatrice. I hope the sound is okay. Yeah, try to reload if you're having issues. I think it's working. It's working okay. Okay, great. Yeah. So anyway, you need to start with some base data. The manually built data, that's the best stuff there is. You can do it yourself. Just spend time on it. You can hire some interns, etc., to get that done. All right. Before you import the data into the directory, it's really important that you think about SEO, especially for the taxonomy or the categories. And just because words like car and automobile, that's a very basic example, but they may have very, very different traffic patterns. And so you can use Google's keyword tool or some of the other tools in the SEO suite to kind of check, and then you can make sure that you're putting the right keywords in the categories. That's really important. I'd spend the time on that up front. You can do it very, very quickly. You can download some common list from somewhere, but I'd really think about it and put together a really nice taxonomy, because that can often make a big difference for your traffic. And then before you upload it, it's often easier to edit it in Excel. This is just a logistical thing if you're using the eDirectory platform. You edit the listings in Excel before they're loaded in if you want to clean up zip codes, etc., or update descriptions. You can do that typically very quickly in Excel or another spreadsheet program just by going through, and then you can upload it. Also with eDirectory, you can always export your data and then upload it again. So you can export it, edit it, and then upload it again, and it will, if you check the option, it will update the records. Just a little logistical tip there. Also, there's some great tools out there for doing data cleanup. One of them I wanted to mention is Amazon's Mechanical Turk, which they call artificial intelligence, and essentially it is a crowdsourced system where you put in these little jobs like add a description for this business into this spreadsheet, and then somebody will say, I will pay. You say people will bid on it, etc., and you can, it's small amounts of money, like, oh, it's 30 cents a description or something like that, and then you can have multiple people working on it and get your spreadsheet fixed up or cleaned up. So this is a great tool. It's it takes a few minutes to really understand how it works, but it's worth the time, I think, to get in there and figure out how it works, because I think Amazon actually built it to manage their own online store and everything in there, to get their stuff done, and then they offered it as a tool to the public as well. But that's a great tool. There's some other ones out there as well. All right. And then there's other SEO tools when you're building a content, SEO mods, Raven tools. I saw this great article in Google Webmaster today. It's a good thing to check out. I'll paste this into the chat here. Let me see if I can do it now. No, I guess I'll paste it in at the end of the presentation here. SEMrush is another one. One thing I wanted to mention about SEO is often our customers are like, oh, do you know anybody I can hire to do SEO, etc.? it is a good idea, I guess, to hire somebody for SEO at some point when you're really at a level where you're driving traffic already, and you need somebody to look at it and do keyword analysis, etc. When you're first starting, I don't recommend doing that, actually. I recommend you learning how to do SEO yourself if you don't know how, or just doing it yourself. And the reason is, often you'll find that actually you can do it better than somebody that doesn't have the domain expertise. And just because you care about it more than somebody that's going to charge you X to do the job. And then also you'll probably learn a lot about content, competitors, etc. through that process. So my recommendation starting out is don't outsource your SEO, do it yourself. When you're doing it, if you don't know a lot about it, research it. SEO is critical for online lead generation, and even if you're going to hire somebody in the future when you have scale, it's important that you have that knowledge yourself to know if they're doing it correctly or not, or etc. Don't just outsource it and check a box that I did my SEO, because you'll probably find you don't get what you want there and it's not successful. Okay, so building the initial directory. Key points for key categories. You really need to add descriptions, photos, etc. Not just listings. Like, everything really needs to look beautiful at the beginning. The directory needs to look full and vibrant. One other tip is to pay very special attention to the elites. And make sure that every category has the industry leaders in it with really nice, beautiful listings. You don't need to tell anybody they're not paying you. An example would be if you're doing a directory, say a hotel directory for New York. The famous Plaza Hotel, or the Waldorf Astoria, which I think they're renovating now. Those famous hotels in the city, they should have beautiful full listings with lots of pages and descriptions and reviews, etc. Before you try to do anything. And every sector typically has a market leader. So make sure that the market leaders have beautiful listings when you first get started, because you won't get the engagement, especially from the much broader kind of tier 2, where there's a couple elites and then there's a whole bunch of the next level, and that next level won't give you the same credibility if you don't have the elites on there. So really put some time into those listings, especially. In every category, everything needs to look great and be full of data. Okay, so pricing. In terms of pricing listings, and now moving a little bit into the monetization part. At this point, I probably should have structured this presentation with the traffic building second, but I just want to mention this now because it's one of the things that you typically do, I guess, when you're setting up the initial directory, etc. And just to think about how you're going to drive things, engagement, etc. So typically 3 levels are great. A free level. The free level is great because then you can just have people a part of the directory even if you're not able to get them to pay yet. It may take you some time to get people to pay. But if they have a page on there, that page will drive traffic and they'll be in your database for emails, etc. So it's often a great idea to have a free listings in there. Then there's an affordable or a listing that everybody's going to buy. And that's probably where you'll make most of your money. And then there is the aspirational, or the elephant, or the big sponsorship, the really expensive one. And it may be that you don't sell too many of those, but the really high-priced listing will sort of set a halo around the rest of the directory. So it's good to have something like that on there. And that way, if you need to negotiate, you can give somebody a free one if there's something when you're getting started, etc. for that. So if you have too many levels of pricing, it often just complicates the sales process and just explaining it, etc., etc. Once you have the directory up and running and you're generating leads, etc., then you can add more levels if you want, if you really want to segment the market and make sure that you're gaining all the revenue you can. Actual pricing that you said obviously depends on the market. I know historically we've had some clients in the more of a B2B sector that are in these sectors that have really industrial equipment, et cetera, and they're able to charge some pretty insane prices, $10,000 a year, I guess, for some listings. Often that comes with some other sponsorship stuff as well. But the thing is, if the sponsor may be in an industry where their average customer spends $500,000 a year or something along those lines, so spending $10,000 a year to be in the directory may make sense if they're able to deliver a client. Some categories pay more than others, so think about that when you're setting the pricing as well. An example would be like in local search, if you're doing a local search type thing, hotels typically much more than a restaurant, or hotels much more than a bakery, certainly. So think about that. You can charge different categories within your sector differently accordingly, hotels versus bakeries. And then one other thing is about the pricing model. Do you want to do a monthly pricing, or do you want to do annual or a pay-per-lead type pricing? To get started, I strongly believe that the best model is actually annual pricing. And the reason for that is for an advertiser, somebody that's buying the leads or the advertisement from you, for them to renew, they need to see some type of ROI. So the thing is, a monthly pricing, they'll pay you the first month, the second month, maybe, but if you don't show them positive ROI by, the second, third renewal, that's going to be a tough renewal to get. Whereas if you're able to get, bill them per year, then you have time, and they may only need to close 1-2 sales per year to get that ROI. So you've got time to make that happen. So I think about that very carefully. The pay-per-lead pricing, I'd only recommend if you're doing very high volume, it's just a tough business to cut. The management of it is a little bit more difficult because often there's lead quality issues, and so if you're not doing very high volume and somebody only has a lead or two per month, they're going to be like, oh, well, one of my leads, it was a spam lead, it wasn't worthwhile. And so you really need to be generating high volume, I guess, to get that to work on a pay-per-lead basis. But that can work as well. And that's actually the reason we don't have that pay-per-lead stuff built into the base product at this point. We can certainly customize it if somebody needs that done, but pay-per-lead is best, I guess, for really high volume sites. And then in terms of retention strategies, one of the strategies is you can use part of the listing fee, especially if you're doing an annual listing, to buy some paid traffic via Google Ads or another source. And so just driving traffic right into the listing, that'll generate some more leads to people. And that works pretty well. Often people stagger that, where they do the buy right after the person originally signs up, and then right around renewal time, etc. So it's important, I guess. Or you can also, in addition to just paying for Google Ads into their listing, you can also give them premium placement, I guess, around this time, just to see if you can drive more traffic and more leads for them. Okay. One other great strategy that I'd say probably most of our successful directory owners, lead generation businesses do is they bundle in some other types of services with the package that they're selling. And these are things that are basic, such as social media management. We'll manage your Facebook page, Adwords management. You can do site and email creation and hosting. We're actually launching a new product early next year that handles that and really optimize websites for lead generation. Very simple websites that are designed just to do lead generation, and then with that, email hosting. And email hosting is great because it's really sticky for the customers. After you've got their email, they don't cancel their listing very often, so that's great. And then you can also do an email newsletter sponsorship where you sell sponsorship in a newsletter that you sign out and that you send out regularly to your full database. That's great. All right, let me see here. I see a couple questions coming in. Let me see if we got some comments. I think Emerson is helping me answer these. How do I send an email blast? Yeah, so yeah, let me talk quickly. Emerson, I guess, answered the question here. Oh, yeah, so Emerson answered the question, I guess, about the MailChimp. One thing I wanted to mention about email is email newsletters is delivery is really, really, really important for it to be successful. So there's all these services out there, such as MailChimp, Instant Contact, Campaign Monitor, etc. And then you could actually buy a desktop program that just sends email out of your directory. When you're sending email newsletters that have HTML and all that sort of stuff in them that are really good for customers to view, it's a really good idea to use a third-party service that is focused on email because they've done business development deals with many of the ISPs, the internet service providers that own the pipes, to make sure that their email gets delivered and doesn't just all get caught in the spam folder. And then they could also do the stats on it so you can see your delivery rates, etc. So certainly email is a huge piece of building engagement to the directory. We have many directories that are essentially primarily driven by an email newsletter. That's what drives often their traffic and their sponsorship, etc. But they also have listings in as well for the monetization piece, and that works great. So use a professional email service such as MailChimp. Campaign Monitor is a great one. I really like that. There's a bunch more as well. Let's see. Doug asked a little bit more about email. Yeah, so we have we're working on a reseller email hosting program. There's some other ones you can get reseller email out there as well. If you have interest in that, I can put you on a beta pretty soon here. So just send me an email about that, and I'll probably be able to get that done very early January for you. There's some other third-party services as well you can use for doing email hosting for your customers. Other things, business cards, whatever you can think of to bundle additional services in. At the end of the day, people aren't like, hey, I paid you X and I only got one lead and I don't have ROI. All right. Todd just asked, print has been making a stylish comeback. Do you offer a tool to create printed directories? Yeah, actually we have, Tom, we actually have a mod that does an export that can be loaded into InDesign or Quark. And then basically, so what happens basically is the InDesign and Quark, you have your publication in there, and then it loads in like the guide listing. So say you're creating like a restaurant guide for a resort area. The system, we have a mod where basically you export it, it comes out in this format, and then you load it into a InDesign format, and then you send that to the printer to print. The print stuff, if you want, we can talk sometime later about that, about how print works and how to do all that. It's probably a longer conversation that's slightly out. I don't know that I have time, I guess, to go into all that today, but essentially you create your design for the publication, load in your data and other content, article content, etc., and then send that to a printer. So that's great. But yeah, certainly talk to us, I guess, just before ordering that. I think probably what you see there online is marketed, I guess, towards people that already have an existing publication. And if you haven't done a print publication before, we should probably talk about it just to make sure you know what you're getting into and the costs and all that sort of stuff. But print is great, and I know a lot of our customers distribute printed guides and that sort of thing. And because it's tangible, advertisers really love that. They love seeing their business in a printed magazine. And that's also something you can often charge extra or upsell for. Okay. All right. Let me go back here. Okay. So sales and marketing. We're going to do another webinar, probably. Maybe, I think in the first week of January, probably, with details on doing sales and marketing, and I'll run that myself, and we'll have some templated marketing plans, etc. So today I'm just going to touch on this very, very briefly. The most important thing is to make a plan, so you're not fluttering around and not making progress. A key thing to remember is that, clients don't sign up for listings on their own. They can, but the percentage that do that is very low. If you have 1,000 listings in your directory, probably like, I don't know, maybe 50 of them might be self-signups. You'll get more claims than self-signups, but still, you cannot depend on that to build your own, to just kind of come in. You got to build your content and get that done. It's really important to understand the difference between sales and marketing and the cost per contact. Some directories don't do any sales at all. Sales is typically, there's a person involved, and so the price point on the lead and the listing and all that needs to be higher. And some directories are marketing only driven. The thing is, nobody's going to buy a $10,000 a year listing without a sales rep involved. That's just a fact. So you need sales in that type of a sale, whereas if you're doing a directory that's a lower ticket thing, restaurant guide, etc., you may be able to widely just do email marketing, etc. So it's really important that you understand your cost per contact ROI on each step of that. Marketing only is for low-cost listings, telesales more expensive per contact, and then in-person sales more expensive still. Okay, so back to engagement. The big secret to engagement today is still email. And you'll find this actually even today with Facebook and all these other systems, that when you first sign up for them, they use a lot of email to drive the initial engagement. Newsletters are great too. Social is actually wonderful as well, and depending on the demographic, especially if it's a younger demographic of your sector, you'll find social works pretty well. The more expensive B2B type stuff, social isn't quite as successful, but it's still good. You'll still drive traffic, etc. with it. But you should probably have a plan for each of these, especially email, and you need to regularly be emailing your database to drive engagement and traffic good. Okay, so building traffic, how to build it. Traffic is basically built by content and links to your content. You need to be very, very careful these days about backlinks and links to your content, because Google has become much, much more sophisticated than in the old days. And so some links are actually not helpful for you. Some of those SEO tools will help you identify that. But you want people to be doing deep links directly into your content that are authentic, etc. And Google picks all those up, and then they index the content as well. And so those are the two things for building traffic. And you can put metrics on both of those, and then you'll see how you're doing as you go along. In terms of content strategies, it's really important that you start and try to make the most complete directory in terms of depth and breadth of the listings that you can. But even after that, you need to add listings regularly. And what I recommend is that you put together a, with your marketing plan, usually part of it is a media plan that says you're going to do X Facebook posts or LinkedIn posts or whatever per week. Twitter posts, etc. And you should probably also schedule time on there to regularly add listings. That's really important. The second thing is the reviews. The reviews are really, really critical for building traffic. And we have the directory listings tagged pretty well, where the detailed listing page, etc. The reviews really do well at driving traffic. So you need to put together a plan, I guess, to get those initial reviews into the directory, and often that involves some outreach to listing owners and say, hey, do you have any recent customers that can add a review? Why don't you send them an email with a link to direct in to add the review here? And that works pretty well, I guess, about getting reviews in. But reviews are really important, and then over time what you'll see is as the directory builds up traffic, those reviews will start coming in organically. The listings will come in organically as well, but the reviews usually come in organically at a much higher rate. And that's great content to have there. And then one other great content strategy is the email interview, and this is more to build an article or blog post. And what you can do is email out people in the sector, whether it's if it's a small business owner or if it's a manager of some B2B company, etc., and email them a set of questions, and you can do that every week. Interview of the week. And you probably want to email out, 3 surveys at a time, 3 interview sets of question every week, and then you may get two out of 3 responses. One of them just is going to ignore you or not do it, and then edit them, and then you can post it up, and it's really great traffic. And then often, whoever was part of the interview, they will share that content on their own website and through their own social media, etc., and give you some of the backlinks. Todd, yes, I think we'll put this presentation up somewhere on the website. So we'll send out an email with the link to it. Yeah, absolutely. All right, and there are a whole bunch of other content building strategies. I think the big piece here is discipline in terms of regularly doing it. You regularly, hey, I'm going to add X per week, and just staying on that, and not for a month or 2, but really for the duration. There's a couple content services. You can hire writers, freelance interns, or go for quality. There's always experts in every segment. No matter what it is, you can hire if there's a consultant that's known in the business segment, you can hire them often to write an article, and they'll love to have their name in the byline there. If your director already has traffic, you may even get them to do it for free, or they may even pay you if you really have a lot of traffic and it'll drive business for them. But otherwise, you can hire writers online. You can do freelance interns, etc. And there's some services out there that you can find. I haven't checked Scripted in a while, but I think they used to be about $50 an article. It's better quality than the worst stuff out there. There's certainly services that'll do that. And then, yeah, you can leverage your customers is great. You can invite people to do white papers, etc. Backlink strategies. You need to be careful about this and review the SEO, but you can have email people things that say, hey, promote your listing, and send them a badge or something to post on their own website or their own social media to link back to the directory, and it'll drive traffic for you. You can use social media, of course, lots of social media out there these days. And the schedule, I want to mention that one more time because I think that is the checklist. The schedule is the most important thing to make sure that you have the discipline for it. And with these reviews, I think it's really important that you set your metric on reviews and that you want to know how many reviews you're going for and did you get this. You can check the site manager to see how many you got. All right. Okay, and so I guess in terms of key metrics that you want to watch while you're building the website and the business, the first one is content metrics. These are probably listings, articles, reviews, etc. You should probably set a target between when you move from the content phase into the engagement phase. Say, I want to get X that have photos, videos, etc. I want to get Y reviews, and Z articles, blog posts, etc. Other content, and then don't focus on driving traffic, I guess, until you've hit that. And then in terms of traffic metrics, obviously the key one is how many visits, how many sessions you're getting per month. And Google Analytics obviously has all that data for you. Depending on what the directory is, the numbers are all over the place. You'll probably find that the typical directories have something like 2 to 3 page views per visit, etc., with a high percentage of new visitors every month, up to 80–90%, depending on what it is. It's really good if you're having new visitors because they generate new leads, etc. Depending on what it is too, I probably have some idea on what kind of traffic you can be driving. Don't hesitate to reach out to me. After the presentation, we could schedule some time to talk if anybody has any questions about things. I'm very, very sensitive about sharing client data, so I never do that. But I'll try to point people in the right direction if I possibly can. And then lead counts, and leads are obviously. That's, if you're not driving business for your customers, they're not going to pay you, so you need to really work on that. One other, let's see, what else? And then one thing is setting your own realistic expectations. My experience, in terms of just getting a site up and running, it's not something, you can get it all set up and looking pretty good in a week, but really it's going to take a few months to really get the content nice and things looking good. If you have more resources and make a bigger investment, you can really build a nice site quickly. We've seen some people jump in and just put together huge amounts of content very, very quickly, spend the money and get it done, whereas often people kind of bootstrap it, go organic. It takes time to build out the content, and then the traffic. Google picks up the new content, and it takes some time for you to sort of build. So give yourself time, set those expectations realistically. I remember before I started ARCA, the eDirectory's parent company, I remember the advice I got was a new business takes 5 years to really sort of, get running well and you get the kinks worked out, etc. I've been doing this longer than that. I don't know that I have all the kinks worked out. But it takes some time so patience is often the patience and persistence, I guess, is really what it takes, I guess, to get this stuff going. So that's pretty much all my content for today. The last thing I wanted to mention is that we have 2 mods that we released over the last year that are really good for driving traffic to websites, and these are the forum and the storefront. And I guess it depends on the mod. What are you going to put in the storefront, etc.? How does that fit in with the business? And then the forum is always a great one. The forum, I think we'll probably end up doing a separate webinar later in January about launching an online forum successfully, because there certainly are some real tactical items in terms of getting that done and off the ground. But basically a forum, if you just set it up and don't really put time into it, it's not going to do anything. But if you're able to set it up and put the time into it, it could be the most fantastic thing you've ever done that takes care of the traffic for your website. It drives traffic and brings it in, and it's great. So, yeah, so I guess that's kind of the presentation I had today. Let's see, Mark would like some data sources to populate the directory. Yes, I'll send those over. Yeah, we can certainly send those over to you, Mark. There's certainly some big ones. Depending if you want to send us an email, I'll post in my email here. Chubb. I'll post in my email here. If you tell me what sector your directory is, and if it's what location, if it's U.S. based, or if it's if it's some other country, I can probably try to point you in the right direction in terms of data sources for that, because it really does depend. Like Info USA is great for consumer data, but there's some other stuff that may be great for other types of things. Yeah, are there any more questions? A bit, how to use Facebook. Okay. Yes, so Doug asked, how do we use Facebook? Okay, so Facebook, here's what we recommend, I guess, in terms of running a traffic building strategy using Facebook. What I recommend is you set up a Google alert. This is just pure logistical here. Set up Google alerts so that you can get new information that comes in, new article posts, etc., on your sector. And then write a blurb about that, post it in your blog with the blurb to the article. You got a link to the article, of course, and then post that in your Facebook to keep Facebook fresh. And then what that'll do is drive out your name to all your people, and people will start liking the article post, etc. And then it'll gradually bring traffic back to the website as well as build your Facebook base. So that's kind of primary content Facebook strategy. There's a bunch of other details, I guess, in Facebook. I'm going to note that, and we'll try to put together some info on exactly how to use Facebook and post that in the blog or something as well. All right. Okay, Todd Sawyer, I understand at the USA have a public library card. You can download files for free. Yes, so depending on what's in the library, I'm not sure what files you can download for free, or if that's the Info USA thing or what's in there. I'd be wary of anything totally free. Often the quality of it is questionable, etc. But yeah, I'm not familiar with that. Okay. Doug mentioned Facebook has the most people of any site. Yeah, absolutely. Facebook has a ton of traffic on it. People spend a lot of their time on it. The question is, what is your sector and what are they doing? Somebody doing airport construction, if your directory is on airport construction, Facebook is a little bit tougher because the people doing airport construction may be on Facebook, but they're probably not thinking about it, etc. at that time. So yeah, Facebook is great. Okay, so yeah, we'll put in an item to get some content out about using Facebook successfully. Yeah, revenue coming in throughout the year. Yeah, so revenue throughout the year. If you sell annual listings and you just keep selling them, you should always have new clients coming in, and then after a year you'll have renewals. The monthly listings are great. The question is, how do you get people to sign up and retention and all that with monthly? So one other strategy about keeping revenue coming in all year is to add some additional services, such as we'll give you sell a listing, which will generate leads, plus sell social media management. Like, hey, we'll manage your website for you. We'll write 3 blog posts, and we'll write a blog post per month for you that you can post on your website and post to Facebook. We'll do Adwords management, etc. And if you can sign people up for a monthly package that isn't super cheap, like if it's just a listing and leads, often the price needs to be low enough, depending. But if you're able to add in additional services like AdWords management, etc., you can get that monthly price up a little bit, and then once you have recurring revenue coming in from the monthly payment, you'll be in good shape. All right. Okay. I guess last call. Does anybody have any final questions here? Okay, well, great. Well, thanks for joining us today. This is actually the first webinar that I've actually run myself, so sorry about the logistical problems at the beginning. I'll make sure next one in January will be super tight as far as that goes. If anybody has any more questions, my email is there in the chat, and really don't hesitate to reach out. I always like talking to people here and what they're doing and seeing what I can help out with. Okay? Well, thanks a lot. Have a great day.